This is the Skin Science Podcast. I'm Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, and here we'll investigate everything skin science and dissect it from a scientific perspective, analyze it from a medical perspective, critique it from a consumer perspective, and give insight from an industry perspective. Welcome back to the podcast. I am Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, and with me in the studio is Angela Wilson McDonald.
Hello, Dr. Hitchcock.
Hi, how are you?
I am fantastic.
Yeah, and we also have in the peanut gallery Dr. Jose Maldonado, and then Seti and Alan, who just got married in Japan for the second time. So congratulations to them. And I do want to show you for today's puzzle we have here. This is called the Bomb Destroyer, and it's actually kind of a little bit of, I don't know what you would call it, satire or something. It's from the Ukraine, and so the puzzle maker who's made these other puzzles here, he's a very good machinist with metals. I guess he thought this was appropriate given the circumstances, and so it took a little long to get to us because of the mail's crap right now, the mail system there. But it's actually a really fun puzzle. It's not super complicated, but a lot of fun. We won't solve it today, but you can buy these if you go online and look up Bruns, B-R-U-N-S. You can find, he has a website as well as it's sold through other puzzle manufacturers like Puzzle Master in Canada and such. So take a look if you're interested in puzzles. That's the one for today that I wanted to show you. Anyway, so Angela, we wanted to continue from the last podcast. Do you want to bring them up to speed?
Indeed, I would. So the last couple of podcasts, we've looked at kind of your history, Thomas, as a scientist. What led you to research the Xycrobe technology, how it came to be. We took a deep dive into what exactly is the Xycrobe technology. And today we're going to take it a little step further. We'll start with a little recap of Xycrobe technology, kind of where we left off, and then talk about what that looks like to bring that level of technology to commercialization, which is what the point we're at right now, in fact.
Yep, I just make it in my kitchen. And then...
There you go. Got a big kettle and a couple of kettles now, huh?
I just stick it in the microwave.
So Xycrobe technology, let's revisit that just for a moment and talk about, that is the microbial powerhouses that are behind the BIOJUVE skin biome line that we're launching at this time. We know now that the Xycrobes are a specific strain, a proprietary strain of C. acnes defendants. And we know that through you and your scientist have put a genetic switch in the Xycrobes to be able to allow them to spend less time growing and more time emitting what we have trademarked as the term bioessentials, which is basically the skin's needs, daily needs for skin health and beauty, such as proteins, polypeptides, and antioxidants. Did I get that straight?
You did. And I do think the audience should know that, as you move from the lab into the land of consumer goods, you have to be careful about how you say certain things simply because it's a regulated field in some capacity. And so some of the language you used is simply because we're trying to find a way to describe the technology and all of its brilliance that went into it from all the different people that have worked on it. Without getting us in trouble.
Of course. We don't want to get in trouble.
Right.
We don't want to get in trouble. So, and I think I should point out too, and one of the most exciting things about the Xycrobe technology, and we learned in our last episode, is that the Xycrobes live deep within the hair follicle. And if you look at the skin as your largest organ, typically 2 meters squared, is that right, Dr. Hitchcock, is what it's measured at for skin surface alone.
Yeah,
but
if you were to take somebody's skin off and put it on a floor and measure it, it would be 2 meters.
But if you consider that within the hair follicles is also part of the skin, then how big actually is that organ if we include the hair follicles?
Well, based off of calculations by Rich Gallo and that were published, around 25 to 30 meters squared, which is about the same kind of surface area you're seeing with the intestines.
So would you say with Xycrobe technology, because the Xycrobes are able to live deep within the hair follicles, would you say that we have unprecedented access, or Xycrobes have unprecedented access to skin cells and immune cells?
Well, in comparison to other topical products that have been on the market, yes, 100%. You have to realize that Topical products have a lot of limitations simply because of the dynamics of the skin. The fact is, we're very oily creatures on our skin, and so watery substances don't penetrate very far. And we know there's tons of companies that have built their whole company based on trying to get through those barriers that our body has in place for a reason, and then trying to deliver things, for whatever their purposes are. And so the brilliance of using your own body's natural microbes to actually deliver things that are skin healthy does a couple of things. The first is, yes, you could call it unprecedented access because the specific species that we're using, that's where they live, is in the follicle, on the surface as well, but about 20% on the surface and about 90% in the follicle. And so, the follicle is a magic place because it has the most access to the human body. And so that's why, for instance, in the book that I wrote with Doris Day, one of the chapters is called The Most Important Microbe on the Skin, and it's C. acnes. I spoiled it. Spoiler warning.
Oh, no.
But
Nobody's going to buy
C.
it now.
And so, it's important because, once we think about that, we don't want to be reductive and say the whole species is important for the same reason. Some strains of that species are important because it causes disease or it promotes disease. But the other strains within that species are important because without them, we wouldn't function properly. So it's like, when people look to destroy a whole species, it's crazy because you actually need it to function properly.
Yep. So what's exciting really about bringing the Xycrobe technology to market within the BIOJUVE skin biome line, and we're going to say that over and over because that's an exciting part of it. We're not just talking skincare, we're talking skin biome care.
That's right.
And there's a difference. What is the difference? Talk to us a little bit about what is skincare, traditional skincare versus skin biome care.
Right. And so when we think about skin and skin biome, that's the big difference there, is that skincare traditionally, it's formulated in a way in order to take any particular active molecule and to drive change in the skin for whatever reason. So there's also ingredients that are meant to drive a better environment. So moisturization, so an HA to be a humectant to hold on to moisture. There's occlusives to keep moisture in. There is vitamin C's to help be a tyrosinase inhibitor to brighten the skin, or as an antioxidant to drive down free radicals from pollution or whatnot. The fact is, you have a lot of topicals that have a lot of great ingredients for a lot of great reasons, but the part that very few have ever really ventured to investigate is that you have billions of bacteria that are on your skin at all times. No matter how clean you try to make your skin, there will always be billions, if not trillions, of microbes on your skin. A lot of those were bacteria. And those bacteria are secreting things 24 hours a day. Now, what they secrete is contingent on a couple of things. What other bacteria in the vicinity, so how they're responding to that, the environment that you provide them, how they're responding to that, whether you've stripped off the environment. So if you strip off all the oils and a lot of the bacteria, what has to happen? They have to rebuild. And so when they rebuild, they're secreting very different things than when the environment's hunky-dory and they're happy. And so just like, people are very different in an environment that's good for them versus when they're in an environment that's bad for them, the same thing happens with bacteria and other microbes, is that the way that they affect your life really affects how they affect your life. I'm not sure if that came through. So.
Yeah. So, bottom line is our skin is an ecosystem.
100%.
And it's more than just skin cells. It is also the microbiome and the environment that houses it all. And when those three things intersect, then we get skin biome care. So
correct. So you have to take care of it all. You can't just choose one or the other, because ingredients that are great for skin cells may not be great for the microbiome or the environment. Things that are great for the environment may not be conducive to the microbiome or even the skin cells. So it's really, you have to think holistically, and that's where it's difficult. That's where the challenge is, because the skincare industry as a whole has not thought of that. And so all of the buckets that they have not been vetted for that. They've only been vetted for maybe one or two, or maybe, so, so that's really where the challenge is, that the industry has to really rethink. And there are companies that are trying to put their stamp on it by, like, My Microbiome, where you give them your product and they tell you whether it's microbiome friendly. I think that's only going to work if we all agree on what it means to be microbiome friendly. And when you see what they do to test, and then I may be mistaken here and I'm happy to be corrected, but from what I've seen, they're looking at how it affects staph epidermidis. But what about the 90% of other bacteria, including the most abundant one, which is C. acnes? So if they're claiming that killing that is friendly, that really is not, in my opinion, true. That's microbiome not friendly. So until we can agree on what that means, we have to be very careful about, as an industry, putting labels and stuff on that don't make sense.
Using that word flippantly, essentially. And so, and one of the exciting things that we know about the Xycrobe technology, the fact that it lives and thrives deep within the hair follicle, we have 24/7 living biome care. That's, a big part of it as well. This is not only unprecedented access to cells, as we just talked about, but the fact that it's 24/7, it's actually something that's living on our skin that allows us to achieve not only unprecedented access, but also do so 24/7. Did I say that many times?
Yeah, you said a few. I mean, it's lost all meaning, but.
No, I think it's just such an exciting, paradigm shift for our industry, quite honestly. And it's very exciting to be on this side of it, which is the commercialization side of it. So we have a live active strain, proprietary strain of C. acnes subspecies defendants that is proprietary, again, to Crown Laboratories. And now the challenge is putting it into a topical product that can be sent, out of our warehouses into the hands of consumers. Now, I know a lot of people have said that can't be done. So talk to us a little bit, Dr. Hitchcock, about what that looks like to be able to create living biome care.
Well, it's not that it can't be done. Everybody knows it can be done. It's just it can't be done in a way that's conducive to doing business, I guess is a better way to put it. Because, there are some companies, like for instance, we know yogurt has live cultures in it. I mean, they claim that, but you have to have a refrigerator, and it's very perishable, meaning yogurt has an expiry that's pretty short, And so that's the point, is if we're going to spend all this money to make these products, do they have to be refrigerated? Do they have a short expiry? There are some companies, I don't necessarily want to throw out names, but there's one company that for the last maybe close to a decade probably has been selling cultures in liquid, and you get them and you are supposed to use them within 30 days, or you're supposed to keep them in the refrigerator. And it's not to say that what they're claiming is done by those microbes is not done. It's to say that that's somewhat of a cumbersome way in which you are to use any type of skin topical. Now, will some people use it and be successful? 100%. But the real question is, does a company want to have to deal with that type of logistical nightmare of getting things? Because, for instance, I bought it from that company. I bought that topical because I wanted to. It's a spray. I wanted to see how it worked and whether it was living when it got to me and stuff. And I'll tell you, I bought it in the heat of the Dallas summer, and it was hot to the touch when it came out. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if any of this is still alive. And if it is, it's probably reduced. Now, again, you could balance that out by having way more in the culture than you need. Additionally, if the culture is still nutrient rich, if you put it on your bench top, it could grow a little bit to augment that. But there's a lot of kind of logistical issues with it. There also is another company in Europe that's done this kind of trick, which was kind of interesting, where they take the bacteria in an oil and they enclose in these little tapioca beads. And so when you get it, you're supposed to break open the tapioca beads to kind of mix it on your face. Again, that a little bit cumbersome, because now you have an oil that is on top of an emulsion, and you have to kind of mix it so it can get a little bit, and you have the little beads that are now on there, and it gets a little bit messy. Not to say that, and also they use, that particular one uses lactobacillus, and the other one before that is a dirt bacteria. And so these are bacteria that are not native to the skin. So there's a lot of kind of issues when it comes to, people have done it, just not done it well, and not done it in a way that's skin related to skin enough to where I think it would move the needle much. That being said, when you start thinking about the strain that we chose, which is of a species that is an facultative anaerobe, which means it can grow in an oxygen-rich environment, it just doesn't like to. So basically, one of the reasons why the Xycrobe spit out so much antioxidants is because it's trying to protect itself because it doesn't like air. And so it just benefits us. It just happens that we like antioxidants too.
Yes.
And so
In copious amounts.
in copious amounts and 24/7.
And 24/7. Did I say 24/7?
24/7. And so, yeah, so, that's where the challenge comes into. So how in the world are you going to get these things to be on the shelf where, they can be pretty stable at shelf at room temperature, and we can get them to people with not a lot of problems? Well, the first thing is there is a lot of research that has gone into, there's a few companies that actually do research where they lyophilize bacteria to try to extend their ability to be dormant. So basically that's like freeze drying. There's a lot of that goes into it, how you coat them, all this stuff. We're not going to give that up. That's all proprietary information. But there's companies that are able to do it and make it stable at room temperature for up to a year, which we've been able to do almost that as well. The real question is, how is that going to be not cumbersome if you have a dry powder or a dry cake of something? And I don't know if you remember, I'll let you describe for the audience kind of when I first gave you your first samples, how it presented it to you.
Yeah. So, I've been fortunate enough to work alongside Thomas for 9 years, over 9 years now, but who's counting? And watch him perform his research in his lab at that time in La Jolla, California, and get to where we are today. And so the first iteration of the product that I remember was in little vials, and it was freeze dried. And then you had a pump of serum, and you were to put a little bit of the serum into the vial, shake it up, and let it kind of reconstitute, and then place it on the skin.
Right.
Which was interesting. It wasn't something that's typically done in traditional skincare, so it was a little uncomfortable, quite honestly. It wasn't the norm. But probably the thing at that time, and this was very, very early on, that was the most off-putting was the scent. It wasn't a terrible scent. It just smelled like cornflakes.
And gym socks.
And a little mix of gym socks. So, with it, a hint of gym socks.
Yeah, just
so,
a smidge.
Again, if it's going to work, the thing is, if something works, we're willing to take quite a bit, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that today's formulations are nothing near that. I'm actually very proud of the formulations that we are bringing to market today, because they, don't have the perfumes, which we know is important, and the fragrances, we know that can be irritating to the skin, but they have a really nice, pleasant scent to them now in final
Yeah, I
formulation.
mean, again, my philosophy is of how we should care for the skin. Is one of the other reasons why I call it skin biome care, is because I don't see it as skincare. Skincare, of course, there's a certain kind of idea that goes behind skincare, and there's some skincare elements in skin biome care, but really, the philosophy, which I call the Halobiont philosophy, and the reason why I call it that is because my idea is that when you treat yourself in any way, whether it's what you eat, whether it's what you put on your skin, whether it's what you drink, it should be with the mindset that I am affecting more than just the human physiology. There's that whole ecosystem in my gut, in my skin, and everything that I do to me affects the ecosystem as well. So if I eat certain things, it's going to actually affect my skin microbiome. If I put certain topicals, it can affect my gut microbiome, because it's all interconnected in some capacity. And so, for me, when I think about formulating, not to put the wrong emphasis, I really, have a struggle with commercialization that is typical, because I know that there's certain things that sell. But I also know there's certain things that are just not good for you. And so on the last episode, I called certain skincare junk food for skin, because really that's what it is. Junk food also sells, and it sells a lot.
Yeah.
We ate some just
and it's
now.
Wonderful.
It's wonderful.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you imbibed several
didn't.
packets of that. But it's and then there's also health food that is really junk food. We all know this. There's like granola bars.
Disguised.
Granola bars are not healthy. They're packed with way too many sugars and carbs and stuff. So it's like there's a degree in which skincare can be thought of as food for the skin, in the sense that there is going to be junk food, there's going to be health food. And we all know that health food is super boring. And sometimes it can be a chore to eat when you eat healthy. And that's kind of how my feeling with skin biome care is, that the balance is trying to do health food, but not make it boring. And that's a challenge, because at first I would say the best thing to do would be just to use what we were talking about, but it's going to be a little smelly and it's going to be a little cumbersome. And so you got to provide some of that cosmetic elegance that goes along with wanting to use it. And that's why there's a happy medium that comes along with, even with food, right? So sometimes we're going to put a little sugar in our medicine, you know, because it just makes it go down. Thank you, Mary Poppins.
There you go.
And so, you know, and that's to say that, you know, there is balance. There should be balance, but you know, with the skin biome care with BIOJUVE, I was very cognizant with working with my formulators. And I'll tell you, there's a wonderful woman. Her name was Asima, and she's passed this last year. But she was the head formulator on the products that we're launching with. And you know, part of the brilliance of working with her is that she was from Thailand. And she brought with her a lot of knowledge of more holistic types of topicals that are not typical in Western civilization, because we're obsessed with feel and smell. And, you know, I've always lectured that the first thing women do when they take the skincare is they put it on their hand, they smell it. Feel and smell. And marketers know that, you know, they know that I'm competing with 100 other companies, and I have a millisecond to capture the attention of this woman who's already bought into this other brand. So a lot of times they go for things that are very sensorial, doesn't have anything to do with how good it is for your skin. And we all realize that, we all know that. And that's why this is a challenge, because my premise has always been, this is healthier for your skin. But even within our group, it's like, Thomas, that's great, but we need something more. And so then we showed, oh, not only is it healthy, it makes
cosmetic benefits.
Makes you look more beautiful too.
Right.
And so that's great. But Thomas, if people don't want to use it, then
it's all for nothing.
It's all for nothing.
Yeah.
So then we have to come up with something that shows that people would want to use it.
Yeah.
Now, part of it is you also have to realize that when you change a paradigm so significantly, you also have to change the way in which you use things. You know, there's a difference between a topical that is just a lot of marketing ingredients that you just slather on and it doesn't matter, versus something that's a little more, I don't want to say medicinal, but it's a health food and it's potent, and a little goes a long way, and there's no need to slather it on. And so I think we have to be a little more prescriptive in the way that we are going to use biome care, because it's more powerful. It's more powerful, and it works with our own physiology and to basically curate the way that our bodies should work, versus trying to mask an issue. It's trying to truly fix an issue.
Right.
And I think that's really where the formulation is key.
Okay, so skin biome care. So it sounds like it's important that even though skin biome care is quite different, in fact, very different than traditional skincare for the reasons we discussed, because it's taking into effect not only the skin cells, but the microbiome and the environment that houses it all, but it has to feel and look and be applied just enough like traditional skincare that it's readily accepted by consumers.
Right.
So that is something that we've been able to achieve with Crown Laboratories. And the other challenge I would suspect too is the Xycrobes themselves, being able to grow them, multiply them in mass quantities to be able to supply not just the U.S. market, but the 40 countries in which we are currently distributing our other products.
Right.
So what does that look like, Thomas? How do you scale up, and what do you have to build in terms of infrastructure and manufacturing facilities to accommodate that?
Well, you know, one of the reasons why we originally, you know, we had a pretty strong relationship with another major company that we walked away from, simply because we had a very different philosophical mindset as to the correct way to go. And so their mindset was, you should go direct to consumer and do it mass. And because there's no infrastructure, you'd have to water down the science to get. And my feeling was, if you water down the science, you shouldn't even do it. You have to go all in with this philosophy, or it's just another skincare line. And so I had to walk away and go with somebody. Luckily, I found Crown that had bought the other company that we were working on, that we sold to them. And they were willing to basically accept my vision for the philosophy, and it was going to require many millions of dollars, to get to where we are today. But we all felt that it would be worth it because it was so differentiated and it was being accepted by everybody we talked to about it. As long as the results were there, we felt it was worthwhile. And that was the only part that made me nervous, because I always knew it would make us healthier. I just didn't know what else would come along, which is what was truly important to get people to pay attention. Because just like with health food, if they don't see themselves getting healthier, they're going to go and eat junk food again, because if they're still gaining weight and feeling
looking and feeling the
horrible,
same, and
why would they do it?
Yeah.
They need something to come from the hard work or the money that they invest. And that was the nerve part that I knew people would be healthier. I just wanted, and so that's really where it came to. But it takes not only millions of dollars, but it takes hundreds of people to bring something from a concept all the way to manufacturing, because there's many people that come and go in the iteration of scientists and marketers and funding and building out infrastructure and manufacturing, and there's just so many hands that touch it. And one of the more challenging parts is everybody has to have a change of philosophy, because even with the manufacturing, when you go in and you manufacture something that's a run-of-the-mill moisturizer, you have so much preservative in there. It doesn't matter if you're a little sloppy on some of your practices. I mean, of course, we don't want you to be, but it's like if you lean over something, or if something falls from the air, there's really not a lot of issue. But when you're trying to really curate the preservative systems and make sure that everything is super conducive to skincare, you open up for a lot more scrutiny and a lot more potential for ruining batches and such. So it takes everybody to learn that we are doing things that are very different, so it requires a much more buttoned up approach to manufacturing, to the types of bottles that we use to put the things into. We consciously used airless pumps. They're more expensive, but we did it because we felt that it would produce a better experience, longer shelf life for the consumer, without having to overgo on the preservative systems. The ones that we use, we curated carefully to show that they were safe and to use on microbes that wouldn't kill the Xycrobes and other microbes in the body, but yet would prevent in the bottle from microbial growth that would cause spoiling of the actual products. So there's so much new science that went into not just the science that is the core Xycrobe technology, but just the way we're formulating. We're using film formers that are using sunscreens in a very different way than they're typically used, because of reasons that most people don't even think about. So that is truly innovation, when you actually are using things in a way that nobody's used them before, and in a way for a purpose that people didn't even know existed. And so I think we're all trailblazing, and I'm very proud of everybody at Crown, because there's been so much of a desire, but there's been so much of a what's the word? Not desire, but everybody's willing to learn, a willingness. There's so much of a willingness for people to say, okay, this is new, so we're willing to do things differently. But of course, with that comes the challenges of you make mistakes here and there. And we've gotten to a place where we feel that we are ready to show the world what we have. Will we change things down the road? Probably here and there a little bit, just because as you know more, you do better.
Yeah, we'll learn more.
We have new products that will be coming out that will fill some of the holes that we've identified. But frankly, the system that we have in place for most people will be wonderful. And everybody that's used it, that's talked to me about it, has seen why we did it the way that we did it.
Right. And so the hero product, the featured product, really is the Living Biome serum, essential serum that's used as a night product. So what we say is that that is the crutch of the rest of the line.
The crutch?
The cruxed.
Crux.
Is that right?
Crux.
Cruxed. I
Look
stand
it up.
corrected. That's the cruxed of the rest of
Just crux.
Crux. I still can't get
am I
it
right?
right.
Look that up, somebody. All right.
Gosh darn it.
It's the crutch.
And crutch.
And the crutch. Yeah. All right.
So that's the crux of the line. I think there's one other product that the other products are meant to really support that, allow those Xycrobes to live 24/7,
24/7.
and to thrive and to provide the environment. There's some prebiotic activity that's going on in some of the products to activate the Xycrobes because they're living in dormant state within.
Yep. And I want to make sure everybody knows that when we're using these terms, it's very much for me important that we use them appropriately, right? And I don't feel that the industry as a whole does that. And I think that that's on purpose. But I've made it a point to even make episodes of Being the Bacteria, to write chapters in my book, I've published articles on this to let people know that definitions matter. And when we say something like prebiotic, the definition of that matters. Just because something's prebiotic in the gut does not mean that ingredient is prebiotic for the microbes we're talking about today. And so we won't go into all that right now, but I do think that's part of the reason why the work that Angela and education is doing to put all these things together. We've spent a couple of years now putting together so much collateral. It's just about putting it in a way that's conducive to learning and making sure people can take it in and understand it. It's all there. And I think everybody, once you start to learn the Halobiont philosophy, see what we've produced, I think everybody's going to want to learn this. I think they'll teach this in medical schools and stuff at some point, because I do think it is the way we're going to start talking about skin
the care
health.
of the skin.
It's the biome. It's not just skin. It is the
Right.
biome. And if you try to reduce it, it's just, I think that's taking a century worth of research and stepping backwards.
Right.
So I think that's where in the pandemic age, we've kind of taken a step back as far as this whole over cleaning, and now I think it's time to take 2 steps forward.
Well, and we're taking 2 steps forward. In fact, we're taking more than 2. So, so this is exciting, Thomas. I can tell you that from our perspective at Crown Aesthetics, who have the pleasure of launching BIOJUVE to medical professionals and practices across the country and then worldwide, we're excited to have
By the
this
time
opportunity.
This airs, it should be full launched, probably, right?
Potentially. And it's exciting to walk into practices and talk about something new. And I think that's the early conversations that you and I have had with some of the more notable dermatologists in the country. That's what you hear over and over again. It's just an excitement about being able to talk about something new. And boy, do we have something new for them to talk about. And super proud not only of the work that you and your team of scientists have done to get us here, but also the work that Crown Laboratories has done to build the infrastructure and the manufacturing facilities that allow us to take this widespread across the country and around the world, quite honestly.
Let me give some shout outs really quick.
I would love that.
Because a lot of times, while this is my brainchild, of course, and I've spent a lot of time and effort, there have been a lot of people that have been supportive and helped this all to kind of come to fruition. And one of them is Dr. Munsuri, who he's a kind of a private person, kind of doesn't like the spotlight. But, he's been a very loyal scientist. And even at times where he didn't see my vision, he was willing to accept that I might be right. And so he's eventually seen that we took the right path. But, that degree of loyalty, he stayed with me since he was my second employee at Xycrobe, and he's moved all the way across the country twice to work with me. And so, and work with Crown. But I want to make sure he gets credit where credit is due. He's been a big part of the science behind this. And then, of course, Angela for, always supporting the vision. And then there's Dr. Mona Alcom, Dr. Brian Jones, and Dr. Sasima, may she rest in peace, who they all kind of given more than a lion's share of work. I guess, I don't know what lion's share is. They've given more than enough of their lives and work to actually seeing this vision through. And they all have a very similar story of kind of cocking their heads a little bit when they first heard it. But then now, once they got invested into it, all have seen exactly about the vision. And then, of course, there's a lot of people that I'm not mentioning that deserve a lot of credit as well. But we'd be here all day.
Oh, here all day.
All
we
day.
would.
And so I just want to
hopefully
make
over
sure
time we'll get to introduce some of those individuals, and would love to dive in. You mentioned some of your scientists and your team in the medical affairs and clinical affairs department who were instrumental in the clinical study that's been done on the Xycrobe technology and the BIOJUVE final formulations.
Right.
Would love to dive into that in a future episode as well, and kind of go deep into the study that we're waiting awaiting publication any day now. Probably by the time this airs, it will have been published, should have been published.
Yep.
And take a dive into what does the clinical study say about
And it's not just clinical
BIOJUVE.
study. That's the part. I was very adamant that we don't just publish a clinical study, but in the same paper, we published preclinical data as well. And the reason I wanted that is because in our industry, when you see a clinical study, your first thought is skepticism of, okay, what's the difference in lighting? Who did this, the grading and all that? I wanted to show that there's a whole story that is all consistent from benchtop all the way to topical or use in the consumer. And then by the time this airs, I'm assuming we'll have stories like even in our peanut gallery, Seti's been using it for a couple months now, and she's raving about it. And we have multiple people in our company that are the same way. We have Angela as well. And so there's lots of stuff that's bubbling up that's very exciting. The publication will be available online. It's open source, so we'll make sure that anybody who wants it will have biojuve.com. that people can go to. It's right now a splash page, but you can sign up for any updates. So if you want to get the publication or anything like that, you can be one of the first. And so just sign up there. If you want to visit to sell it through, or if you're a consumer and you want to buy it, there'll be a physician finder.
Yep, physician locator.
Yep.
So those who stock BIOJUVE in their practices will be easy to find for the consumer.
Right. And so really it's all happening very quickly. We're basically very prepared. The most prepared I think we've ever been for anything we ever launched.
This is true.
It's just so new that we want to do it as well as we possibly can and as controlled as we possibly can to make sure that it's done as correctly as we possibly can, just because we feel like we've done such a good job as a group of people to bring something so innovative to market. We don't want to drop the ball here. We feel like it's ours to lose at this point. And frankly, as far as, for me, I don't want this philosophy for me is bigger than a brand. It's for me something that is, I'm hoping, going to drive the future of the way that we treat the skin biome. So for me, there's so much more riding on it than just making a brand successful. It's basically a company, a philosophy, and my own reputation. So for me, I'm very excited about all this. I just want to sleep for a month after, though.
We won't be sleeping for a while, I hate to tell you, Thomas.
Yeah.
But we're all excited. We're excited for you. We're excited for the team of scientists. We're excited for Crown Laboratories to see this come to fruition, because they've made we as a company have made a significant investment to get us to this point. And we do wholeheartedly believe that we are on the brink of doing something very special in the skincare industry by launching something completely different than what's already out there. So
24/7.
24/7.
24/7.
So thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
I loved hearing about, kind of how BIOJUVE as a formulation and as a line came to be. And we look forward to exploring more kind of the clinical study that supports its use and the benefits, cosmetic benefits that we're seeing.
Yes. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that more on future episodes. And so, Angela, where can they find you if they want to talk to you?
I am on Instagram at Angela W. McDonald.
Okay, and let's give her some love there. I am a follower, and her content is mesmerizing. It is constant. It is constant.
I'm not saying I'm a good Instagrammer,
No,
but
neither am I. But
I will get better.
Yeah.
I'm committed.
Well,
with
let's
the launch
follow
of
her. Let's
BIOJUVE. Everybody
force her.
follow me.
Let's
Yes,
force her
I
to
promise
start
I'll put
producing
some things
content.
up quickly.
Then you can follow me at dr.t.hitchcock. That's dr.t.hitchcock. And also you can go to crownlaboratories.com if you'd like to look some more into our microbiome research or watch the Beauty and the Bacteria series, which I highly recommend, at least episodes 1, 9, and 10. Other than that, thank you for your eyes and ears. We hope you gleaned something from this conversation, and we can't wait to see you next time. Goodbye for now.